Good afternoon, everybody. How's it going? What's up? Glad everyone could join me this afternoon. Today is Tuesday, June 11th. Let's jump in. I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker dealer and member of FINRA SIPC. All of my trades are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you and let a growing financial condition. My position disclosure is just about the same, but I did get out of that TNA. Quite the battle. Started a little too early in it. Traded it really well overall. Kept open against me. Drained it back to making money, and then people doing it a little long. I have that. I had enough of a profit cushion to keep it into all the events tomorrow. So I just had to be prudent and close that one out. So I am no longer in the TNA for the IWM exposure. I did it well, but it was not easy. It would have been a lot easier if we were on the NASDAQ or the S&P. Like, pretty much it's always easier to just be long on the NASDAQ than the S&P. Speaking of which, the S&P finished up at 40%. The Qs finished up 0.7%. The IWM finished down 0.36%. The big close above that $200. It closed well above lows. And especially because it was ex-dividend. So it was like, I think, a 56-cent dividend. So basically, closed the equivalent of, 201.16 or so. So still down on the day, still relatively weak again, but not a disaster as long as it continues to hold that key $200 level that we've discussed is so important on the weekly chart. But once again, given the TLT bounce back today, almost up to $92, up 1%, related to some relief in interest rates, you would actually expect that the IWM would perform even better. But it has seemed like for this entire year so far that our kind of typical correlation between interest rates and the IWM has not held true in the same way that it has for the last year or so, before this month starting. So it's definitely been a little bit tricky to analyze the Russell. It seems like it's relatively weak when interest rates are higher. It seems like it's relatively weak when interest rates are lower. You can't seem to get any real relief. And on top of that, what's been tricky is this mixed message that we've been getting from the market overall when we look at the daily chart. Looking at the part of the spies, looking at the chart of the Qs, we said it after hours yesterday. We said it again this morning. It's a beautiful bull flag. It looks ready to go. It looks ready to move higher. And there's this continuation today. New all-time highs for the S&P on a closing basis, and basically closed on highs. So S&P looking phenomenal. Nasdaq leading the way, obviously leading the way. So Nasdaq is phenomenal, up really big on the day. Apple was the leader in that space today, up 7.5%. I named today's afternoon meeting in YouTube. I said, "Hey Siri, how much is Apple up today?" So, great continuation, solid bounce back. The market took the night big sort of event from yesterday, and despite that one crab apple, Siri's talking to me. Despite that one crab apple of sorry, this it's not something you study. One crab apple of an analyst who said that Apple is still an underweight rating with a low price target because there were no new surprises. The rest of the market say that, you know what, this thing is pretty cool from yesterday, even if it wasn't necessarily a surprise. I think it was expected that they were going to try to take artificial intelligence and incorporate it into Siri and maybe take voice to the next level. I've always found voice to be kind of broadly disappointing. Um, I've never really used Siri that much. I've never really used, oh, it's looking at me again. I've never really used Alexa very much, even though I've got one of those also. I've just always found that I don't know. It just wasn't really a great product. But talked a big game yesterday, and it would be cool to eventually be able to have like an AI personal assistant that can really understand things. So we'll see if that's the direction things are going. It seems to be the direction that the market thinks that things are going. And Apple got bought up in just a huge way today, up 7.5%, leading the market higher. Look at that Apple chart. Oh boy, wow. Um, leading the market higher, allowing the Nasdaq to break out and get continuation of the bull flag. So I think we need to make this in the Nasdaq rates. And we keep getting that breakthrough, whether it's Apple today or it's NVIDIA yesterday, or it's mainly the AI related play, but it keeps getting more and more continuation. But when you make the surface, you have a little bit of a mixed message because not everything looks the same. Look at the RSP. Forget about the IWM, you like to go to the IWM, but look at the RSP for a second, which is the equal weighted S&P. This is not anywhere near. I don't say not anywhere near, but compared to the S&P and the Nasdaq, it is not anywhere close to all-time highs. So your average stock in the S&P is vastly underperforming the Magnificent Seven that make up. I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe someone knows offhand. 25% or so of the actual S&P. So the RSP continues to be very neutral. Not bullish, not bearish. It moves down. It's a tightening pattern. It actually moved down on that tightening pattern this morning. It got built up. This is in the cubic rate. And the IWM, which really doesn't include any of those seven stocks at all, is just almost been a disaster. If I was a I would call it a disaster. It's really consistently relatively weak, no matter what the news is, no matter what interest rates do. Continues to slow down. I, I don't know. If you showed me what interest rates have done over the course of the year, I really would have thought that this IWM would be fair. But they continue to save this thing. They saved it again today. A second day in a row, and again, below 200. Everything's up. It's by the way. It's one thing away. I'm tapping it down below $20 yesterday morning. It's extended down there. You can look to buy it. But then they got down below $200 the second day in a row. And it was very weak off the open and traded below yesterday's low. Even after the dividend, it traded below yesterday's low. Um, just potentially very concerning. And it was able to get back up for the second day in a row. So, I don't know. It's not really bearish. It's not outright disaster. Even though it's getting close to it, you really want to see this AWM to get back to the you get, more neutral. Right now, I describe it even as neutral to bearish. So it's nice and really neutral. I don't know. It certainly to me a little bit more cautious the last two trading sessions at this point while we wait for more clarity. And maybe where we will get that clarity uh, will be. Can you please stay a bit away from your microphone? It's a bit muffled. Yeah, I'll do my best. Just on a different setup again today. Just a comment from the YouTube. I'm actually pretty far away from it. Um, how does it sound to you guys? I don't mean to interrupt myself, but I remember speaking to people in the VTF. I had gotten some feedback at the end of my time in Idaho that I was a little bit quiet. I was a little still that my sound was a little bit quiet. Um, and now I'm back in New York and I'm trading on three different trading setups depending on the day and where I'm actually located. Cool, thanks. Um, all right. Yeah, so just kinda continuing here. So we got this information in the market. It's certainly could be a little bit more in the last several days. We'll see if we get a resolution of things tomorrow. We've got some major macro events hitting these next couple of days. Um, Tomorrow morning we got CPI. Tomorrow afternoon we got Fed. Thursday morning we got PPI. So tomorrow in particular is a big, big day for the market. And while more often than not, I think that news events tend to move the market in the direction the technicals were already telling you, which at least for the S&P and the Nasdaq, that would be better. We also know that if there's ever a way to get a very fast change in the story of the market, it's coming from more fundamental events. So we've got two major fundamental events tomorrow, CPI at 8:30 and Fed at 2 o'clock. The big thing about the Fed is going to be that adjustment. There's going to be no cut tomorrow. There's going to be no shake tomorrow. It's going to be the dot plot adjustment. We saw one of the CC analysts this morning saying, if I remember correctly, that he thinks that there's a 30% chance that the dot plot even moves to just one cut this year. I don't think it's going to happen. The Fed has been pretty transparent for a while that they're trying to stick with these two cuts. So I think that that's what we're going to see. But 30% chance is a pretty high chance based on at least the one analyst thought process. So we'll see how it goes. We might actually get a bigger PPA move than we usually get. But what we've seen for a lot of Fed meetings recently is that the 2 p.m. move is kind of like much ado about nothing. You get a lot of volatility, but not really much direction because there haven't been any surprises that the Fed has thrown at us at 2 p.m. in quite some time. And then the bigger directional move actually usually comes in a press conference. I assume that the updated backpack gets released at 2 o'clock tomorrow. And we're going into that with a moderate amount of uncertainty. So we might actually get a bigger and more directional move at 2 o'clock than we typically have seen in the past. And we'll kind of take things from there. Oh, that reminds me, I set a meeting at 2 o'clock tomorrow. I need to move that as soon as I finish this meeting. Um, Cool. So that's my update for the market. As far as trading goes today, some pretty good trades. I think the main really light. Stay away from that one family. Even though pre-market this morning we said that there was a viable dip. We're gonna make $2 in rally. We're gonna make $2 in counter. Counter, I really good trade. I did not approach it aggressively, to be honest. I could have made more if I did. But we noted how positive yesterday's price action was for Palantir. But the last time it didn't get added to the S&P, they brought it up into the potential announcement of an addition to the S&P. It didn't get added. It was relatively weak and sold on for like 8 days in a row. This time around, they did back it down. Yesterday, I'm not getting added to the S&P, but they bought it right back up. So it's very different. And I always think it's a really positive sign, something that you want to pay attention to when negative news comes out and a stock actually reacts okay to it. Back down in it yesterday because the bond popped up to 55 at the ADMA. So it's bouncing through some basic actually. It's broken out of some near-term resistance. It's broken out of a downward channel that it had been in. It got bought back on negative news yesterday. So this was a radar for $22 continuation today. I hope some of you guys caught it. It was a pretty good trade. I made a few bucks in it. But again, it really wasn't very aggressive. And the only other thing that I really focused on outside of the swing management was buying the IWM, which we were able to buy this. I started buying small and pulled out. I was buying small with room to build in to get the second candle. So we got this little talk, being offered in Q&A for 35.16 and not getting through with this and it's frustrating. But again, I just think that we got even heavier into this time move a little bit, and then it went into the low and it just went into an upside grind for the rest of the day. So it's been really required patience, much more so than yesterday. Yesterday when we got the gap down, the first candle itself was the signal for buy, and that also worked really well. They sort of required a little more patience. Speaking of which, it reminded me, this wild sell in the S&P and the Nasdaq today at 9:45. I think a lot of us, myself included, were expecting a little bit more of a boring day today from the index perspective, just because that's what we tend to see on a Tuesday with no real events right in front of major macro events happening tomorrow. And there was actually a lot of action in the S&P and the Nasdaq. They sold the S&P below yesterday's low and very hard at the beginning of the day. This 945 candle was one of those panels to take notice of, albeit on a small time frame, some 5 minute time frame. And then we said, we have to put it in a if it can get above the high of this 945 AM candle, particularly for the size of the Qs, then you will get a decent up move. Because it's a big pickup in volume, it's a wide ranging negative Maribosa candlestick getting you below yesterday's low. you snap back to the ADMA, that's not even enough really to clear that negative mobility. So you have to push through the ADMA, indicating that there's a little bit more of the ADMA, let's say, post than what about the ADMA. And then once it happened, it was really continuation for the rest of the trading session. And the S&P and the Nasdaq were able to sell that heavy, that early on, spike less. But you know, I think Apple like, was just really crazy today. I haven't seen Apple move like this in a while. You know, you had the big update on the earnings report, which was that earnings report back here in May 3rd, but the gap itself was the majority of the move. The majority of the move happens the night before when the earnings was actually released. This was all intraday. But you played the pick red now, you can green by a little bit. And we're now noting the relative strength, I think, in the morning meeting and then getting that continuation. So yeah, Apple was phenomenal. If anybody caught that, there was a few good moves that were I do still think that it was and is a day to be a little bit more patient different in the macro events and the fact that we have a little bit of a mixed message from the market. So for that, I'm happy to take a look at whatever you guys have. Any questions? Anything that anybody wants me to take a look at? Tate giving us our chart that is comparing the Russell and the Nasdaq. I mean, that thing is gross. That's absolutely gross. Um, yeah, interesting that I'm getting some feedback that my voice is really muffled in the YouTube. It's interesting because the VTF everyone says isn't great. I'll try to have the tech team look at that. Not in this trading location during the week too often. I'm usually here on Fridays. And Friday we don't do an afternoon meeting, so hopefully it's not too often or too bad. But Gabriel on YouTube, what do you make of these extreme volatility moves? Some open positions that I've had and was on and was in the money on got me stopped out because of the morning sell-off. Um, I'm leaving everything in extreme with volatility in quotes because I wouldn't consider this to be volatility at all, especially from an index level perspective. I mean, we definitely have seen a lot of these days, and we've discussed it in the past, that there is a lot of exclusion. Or some of these days, the index itself doesn't do too much, but the stocks all over the place. So, you know, if the S&P is going to be flat on the day, let's say, but Apple is up 7.5%, then you have to inherently have enough companies in the S&P that are negative and weak to make up for the fact that Apple is up 7.5%. So you might see a lot of weakness up there, and we've seen it. That's why the RSP itself has been so weak to Apple and NVIDIA is because everything, you know, Apple's moving up huge and the S&P is only moving up a little bit, and NVIDIA is moving up huge and the S&P is moving up a little bit. It inherently means that there has to be selling and rotation coming from somewhere else. So if you get into the market, there's a lot of weak areas that are out there. And those are coming in, there's a lot of weak areas that are out there. With the NASDAQ, which is, you know, take the NASDAQ. Um, there are a lot of weak areas in tech. I mean, look at growth. It's very significant for you. And you can see a lot of these companies have performed really bad. Almost anything that's software related. Didn't snow here today. They had a little bit of a bounce back. That's not a great bounce back, considering that there was that big insider purchase in snow. A lot of these software companies have just been getting absolutely pummeled. A lot of them are down like 30 to 60% on the year. Compare that to the tech index, which is the NASDAQ, which is big on the year. So there's certainly been a lot of rotation that's out there. I'm at the point though, and I've talked about this a bunch recently. Picking bottoms is a very difficult thing. I'm at the point where I'm looking for bounce back in software. I think it's become overdone a little bit. The question I don't know the answer to is, in order to get a bounce back in software, do I need a downtick in AI or or not? Do I need NVIDIA to go down for software to get blown up? That's been some of the premise that has led to software weakness. is that you're not going to need a lot of these software companies anymore just because you're going to get AI to be able to do that work for you. For me, I think that there's a lot of potential in AI, but that seems to be a little bit overdone, the degree to which they've sold some of these stocks. What I would love more than anything else, honestly, is for these AI names to maybe not have a big sell-off, but like a small sell-off, so they can move sideways for a while, just range out a little bit, just reach an area where the price makes sense to not continue anymore. And then see if we replace them with other things will either go sideways. But honestly, this NVIDIA chart, I wish I didn't have that full scale on this chart from yesterday, but this NVIDIA chart looks phenomenal still. I think it was negative today a little bit, right? Yeah, negative 0.8%. Three people sold NVIDIA to buy Apple today. From Gabriel, can you look at ENPH? It looks like it's about to break out in the weekly. Sure. I know you've brought up this ENPH in the past, and it does look pretty good. Of this 134.50 to 140 area. Checking out the weekly. Yeah, nice base, a little bit of a higher low. Resistance into again that like 137 to 140 areas. It's where you need to see it clear. But looks pretty good. It's having a good week so far as well. And then you're also mentioning Snap looks interesting on the weekly level also. Um, Start with the daily. Yeah, I'm in Snap. I like it. Big move on this earnings report. It's at a good, healthy pullback to this 15 area that it's based off of, and it's created some resistance in this 1540, 15 area, 1550 area that's trying to push out through. And I'm looking for a move uh, back to like the 1650 area where it's had a little bit of previous resistance on. So we'll see what it can do. But yeah, it looks pretty decent. What does the weekly look like? We assume the weekly is still kind of gross. Yeah, this weekly. Look at that sell-off end of 2021 into 2022. It's definitely not productive weekly. You know, you got this higher low. This was also an earnings report. Look at the volume on this from February 2024. So you really want that if you're big picture on this, you really want this thing to negate that and get back above 1750. That was like a nasty earnings report where they bought it up really big into it. And then the report was a huge disappointment. So it's interesting to see this back up there. So please take feedback from people on YouTube on the microphone. I'll talk to tech for next time I'm looking from this computer, try to see if I can get it figured out. Uh, GameStop completes at one. They already completed it. Oh man, you think I'm huge? It should be a huge on that. I'm surprised that they completed that in 2 days. Maybe GameStop really wants Roaring Kitty to win after all. I can't believe that they completed that entire money offering in 2 days. Sick. From Bill, I saw someone talking about Ryan Cohen is going to buy Bitcoin and try to trade at a premium like MSTR. I don't know how credible that source is, but it's food for thought. Yeah, I mean, they gotta do something creative. I don't know if it's that necessarily. It could be. Who knows? But I got to think creative. We were talking about this, I think, in the VTF the other day, right? That the business model of just games and stores probably isn't going to work great because more and more of that, I think you can just like buy the game through the internet basically and have it loaded up onto your gaming system. I really don't play games, so I don't know the area from firsthand knowledge, but that's kind of my understanding of it. Um, but what we're talking about is that GameStop has probably just raised so much money with these equity offerings in a month. Like they should just go buy some other business. Like half joking about when AMC bought that gold mine. It's not really still doesn't make any sense to me. But I assume they still have it. AMC had bought a gold mine somewhere. There's just a business. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But at least with like crypto related or something like that, they could do something different. I like that idea, Jim, especially if they want to do it at a premium. Yeah. There's a question of what Roaring Kitty is going to do with all of his calls expiring soon. He either has to lay out a lot of cash to exercise and take the stock, or he's going to affect the liquidity as he's exiting the contract. That's interesting. I'm pretty sure it expires this Friday, but confirm that. Definitely confirm it. If I remember correctly, oh, it's the 21st. Okay. Sure, that's what I'm gonna say. Um, don't spend it all in one place. Well, uh, okay. So he's got a little bit of time with these still. What's the number? 69 and he's a billionaire? Sick. I wonder on that bill if he could almost get like a loan for the cash if he wanted the stock off of those. Yeah. Right. Back over to the YouTube. Kiwi Freak. Peanut butter freak? Is that what I'm assuming that means? I like peanut butter as much as the next guy. PB Freak. Hey, Derek, can you take a look at AEHR? Okay. Um, take a look at AEHR. I think that it's made three legs down and recently broke over a 10-week consolidation and is holding. I don't like that it's been very weak compared to the strength, presumably versus the market. Yeah, I mean, listen, we're talking about there's a lot of stocks out there that the perks look like this. There really are. I mean, this is another one. This thing's just gotten posted this year. It looks like it's down over 50% on the year, but the technical picture here has greatly improved. So you have this nice base that formed here. It's broken out of that base. It's building a bull flag above that base. Um, I agree with what you're saying about the relative weakness compared to the market and the stock, but this is, if the market crashes because of the CPI or the Fed tomorrow, then this idea will probably be out the window. But I've really started in the last like week or two to actually look for technically bit some of the bigger performers that are out there. And I don't know this company's business, but these are the types of groups that I'm looking to see if they could play some catch up. So the best pick up in the space, the least bull flag here. If the bull flag itself breaks up, I mean that alone technically should give you another $2 higher up to 1550 or so. And I think you got bigger resistance at 1750 to 18. And if that process is right, that they buy back a little bit some of these more beaten up stocks at a certain point, I don't see why you can't get a move honestly to the 16 to $18 area in this thing. So I kind of like it. These are the stocks I'm looking at right now. Which maybe if there's a new video and stop looking at these names, but they're just so beaten up at this point. I feel like the sentiment on them is so bad. Thanks for anything that's kind of social related. But I want to see if we can get a little bit of mean reversion at a certain point, which, like I said, I'm glad that mean reversion happened because they moved sideways and software as a bid than anything else, but we'll see. Um, ANET from Gabriel. Yes, good day, ANET today. I feel like I needed to buy the breaking this thing a little bit today. And ERJ. That's the plane company, right? I don't look at this one too often. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I don't like today's candle, actually. I take that back. Could have gotten an inside up and up in continuation today. And for some reason, it was weak and it closed poorly despite the market's strength. The daily figure still looks okay, but I would take a pause after today's candle. Puts in the penalty box a little bit. Uvixi Bull in the YouTube saying, for what it's worth, GameStop has been selling merchandise for games in their store for a while because you can't download that stuff. Okay. Getting in the next business? Why not? Gotta help. wonder if they're selling Roaring Kitty. They sell Roaring Kitty t-shirts um, at GameStop stores. Correct. Can you take a look at some of my trades today? I took ONON at 935 when it broke back through the daily level of 4350. Okay, yes, 43 to 4350 looks like a zoom. Popping over to the 5 minute chart. Um, Broke back through the daily level at 4350 at 935. I like that trade. Sold it hard into the gap on the first 5 minute bar into the ADMA, but it's also at the same time showing relative strength compared to the market because the market's right at that point and this stock is green. So you bought it back through your daily level. You got your risk covered at 10 a.m. So the market was bouncing and ON was retesting 4350. Okay. Yeah, it seems like it didn't have a strong correlation to the market really at any point throughout the day. But yeah, testing the ADMA on the 5, market bouncing back. Um, and tailed back up because of the level and the relative strength here. I added to my long. I like that you did that, especially because you already got your risk covered, and then you got stopped out at 1220. So, all right, I have a thought, but I'm gonna hold on to it. And then you're asking me about arms, so I won't hold my thought. So, I think that you don't mention that then you get stopped down at 20 after you take this ad. You don't mention if you got your risk covered on your ad. So one thing that I would mention, and I want to make sure that this is kind of what you're doing in this situation, is I would treat these as two completely separate trades, even though they're in the same stock. I know that they're in the same stock, so your front-end trading software, I think you're on Lightspeed, will like give you an average price based on your different entries. And I have found in the past that that can be confusing for traders sometimes. But if you actually sit down and do the math on it, you can view them as one trade based on the average price, or you can view them as two to totally separate trades where you've got this stock versus this loan, where you got your risk covered, and now you're taking a new trade in this thing with that trade's appropriate risk and that trade's appropriate reward. If that's the way that I would want you to do it, that's the way that I do it. I think that's a better system when you're doing an ad. It's a simple trades. So then your first trade is working fine. You take this ad. Um, maybe you get your risk covered. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just using 10 a.m. low as your stop loss, and you get stopped out at 10:10, or maybe you don't get stopped out at 10:10. You catch this move to 10:25, but you get your risk covered versus those lows. However, you're still have to play for yourself. Either way, whether you're taking that buy and getting straight up stopped out, or you're taking that buy and then you get your risk covered and then you get stopped out, I would not let the new trade affect the original trade. And therefore, it's not going to consider to trail your stop loss on this to there and then you got stopped out. But if you didn't actually trail, you never, I don't think you ever should have gotten stopped out. It didn't break lows, right? 43.12 is the low. Oh, it did break lows. It's oh, that hurts my soul. I wasn't even in the trade and it hurts to look at. Brooklyn. So maybe that's what happened to you. But all the same, the outcome is not what matters. The process is what matters. And I would say just make sure you have these with two separate grades. Maybe this one fails. Maybe get your risk covered. This one works really well. Then unfortunately pushes new lows by 2 pennies. It just is what it is. When selecting stocks, I was looking at ARM on the 955 bounce, but I didn't take it because semis in general look weak. Plus, I don't really see a daily setup there. Instead, I added ONON at 10, um, thinking it had higher probability to run compared to ARM. But I feel like every time I go to the wrong name. Don't get in your own head. Don't get in your own head. ARM does look tougher to me because you're chasing a day two. So I kind of agree with the thought process. I also like the ONON spot where you're buying it, though it's a little bit extended. Um, I don't know. I don't have good feedback for you on the name selection thing. On the one hand, I could tell you, well, just take in everything. Pick a move. But obviously, you have to do that in a newbie, and the ones that work and the ones that don't. But obviously, you have to do that within the confines of risk that's appropriate. and you're trying to analyze the layers of probability, and it seems like you're doing a good job with it. Um, so yeah, I didn't have strong feedback for you on one versus the other or why it feels to you like you always get in the, uh, and I even said based on your feedback with the questions in the VTF, it probably feels to you like whenever you're looking at two potential trades, the one you take is the one that doesn't work well, and the one that you don't is the one that works great. Um, First thing I would say is don't get in your head, focus on the process. Second thing I would say is maybe you can find a way to spread risk out a little bit amongst multiple trades instead of being fully loaded in the one. But based on your analysis, I prefer the one that you took. So I would have done the same thing. Hope that helps. From Eli, how do you like NXT? Take a look at NXT. Next topic. Not familiar with the name, don't really know the business, don't know what they do. I've definitely seen the symbol come up in the past, but I like when I have an idea of the company a little bit better. It's fun. It's fun. It breaks fire every time you can go today in this thing. I wouldn't want to lose yesterday's low. So if it loses 56, I'll probably put it back in the penalty box a little bit and let it reset. But as of now, you have an inside day from today. So you can potentially look for an inside and up tomorrow if the market's working. Thoughts on the financial graph. So yeah, saw that relative weakness early on today in the financials. Interestingly enough, yesterday morning, I actually leaving a warning for financials because the European financials were super weak, but the U.S. financials didn't follow down, and then today they were weak. So I don't exactly know. It's been a really big move for the financials. They're still overall a very bullish firm after a really big move from those November lows. But it seems like it broke this wedge a little bit to the downside. So what I've been talking about with this XLF in the morning meetings is I want to buy the confirmation that's breaking up above the levels. I want to be buying this thing. I want it to be back above 4150 to 4160, kind of that area, maybe 4150 to 4170, in order for me to be looking in, or for me to be buying a larger dip while it slings down. Uh, Today just simply like a day one of breaking some support and breaking the wedge that it's built out to the downside. So for me, I don't know the reason why it's able to get it that the rules we need to obey for sure. Um, but I don't think that I would be involved in the financials unless one of those two situations happens at this point. Either the curve's cleaning up and looking a lot better, or the curve actually extends down to a spot where we've got extension and a setup, and we can look for kind of an oversold downside grade. We're looking at a little bit of how this XLE has been recently, though I actually think that the XLE has it wasn't extended down, but to some degree, it's faded down to areas that are a little bit more interesting, where the XLF has not yet extended down to areas that are a little bit more interesting, and it's just beginning to break down now for the first time. This XLE really broke down starting back in April and has just continued to kind of be weak. It finally got all the way down to the 200-day. Obviously, got all the way back down to these upper 50s where Warren Buffett has consistently been buying. And by the way, just bought more in the last couple of trading sessions. So, it took a lot of patience, I think, of saying, hey, this XLH and these other names, they're a little bit broken right now. Let's just be patient. Let's be patient. Let's wait for the right spot to come in on the downside to be able to buy some stock. Or if it can get back up on its own, feed itself. And then when some times and here, I was like, I don't know exactly what places. I was like, if this XLH can get about 94 or 95, the chart is looking better. And it could be more interested. XLF it's the same deal now. You need to try to improve above 4150 to 4170 to be more interesting. Or I needed to sell down to a more interesting spot like XLE eventually did, or extended down, which XLE never did. So I need to some of these financials look interesting. Uh, KRE have been much weaker than the XLF has, but it looks like today the KRE had a decent little bounce back. It's actually down less than the XLF is, which is relatively rare. Um, she had some legitimate passive extension at Lowe's today. The XLF doesn't. And then it gave a little bit of an oversold bounce. The KRE is much more correlated to the IWM. The XLF is more correlated, I think, to just being the financial sector of the S&P basically. So we saw decent bounce back 2 days in a row from the IWM, and the KRE probably helped it, or it helped the KRE. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Thank you for the question, Vikas. From Tate, I believe pursuing licensed merchandise is also a viable option. It's surprisingly difficult. This is on GameStop. It's surprisingly difficult to find high quality, officially licensed game products like toys, clothes, art, etc., considering how big the industry is. If merchandise isn't the route they take, committing fully to the pre-owned market could be their best option to stay in the gaming space for another decade or two. To me, they need to do both. They really need to revolutionize. I think they need to do both, and they need to get into something that they're not currently in. It's likely that the next consoles in a few years from Microsoft and Sony will not include a physical media player. Thanks for the thoughts on GameStop as an industry expert. Hey, back over to the YouTube. Let's see if I missed anything back in there. You have more commentary on GameStop about the uh, GameStop has been selling merchandise that because you can't download it, and that merch can't be bought off Amazon easily due to it being produced by companies like Nintendo. They have partnerships with GameStop. I assume that they would guarantee some sort of sales over the typical brick and mortar bear argument. Okay, well, thanks for the video. From Apex Joy, what's the logic behind financial weakness there? Right, it's kind of what we just went over, like AXP and GS before the Fed decision. Yeah, so things really got one, I wanted to just actually specifically mentioned. So AXP got smoked, and not 100% sure if AXP is in XLF. It probably is, but I don't know. You had a national card on XLF, and they both done it really well. But I would like to confirm if AXP is actually in XLF. But yeah, the day of weakness here, XLF broke lower, big support, was a big support as well. I don't have anything else to read beyond that outside of the fact that, it's been a big move for a lot of these things. And Goldman has been also on a pair since the last earnings report. The last earnings report has been big street from Goldman since DJ Simon took over as CEO. And it caused the stock to break down. We went from 410 to 370. And now it just broke lower, I think, a little bit with the XLF today. I don't have anything else beyond that on the financials for you guys, though. And my thoughts on UAL. UAL is just really range bound, so I don't have much thoughts here. Needs to get above 54, and if you're bullish, you probably don't want it to lose 51. Thanks for the questions. AXP is in the XLF. Thank you, Roble. Eli asking if I could take a look at Uber. Sure can. Uber looks great. I think we called it out. Well, actually, I think one of you guys, I don't think it was me, called this out as a long on the 5th. Great call. Break of this descending channel here, broke up. And then what closed that big gap the next day, but great continuation. It's been flagging since. This thing looks really good. Obviously needs some market participation, so let's see what happens with these numbers tomorrow. But this looks good through 70 for continuation for momentum. It looks good, potentially bigger picture long versus this phase low. They look great. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys joining. Uh, Hold on, take sneaking something in. Can you explain how you manage the three setups? What do you mean by the three setups? Um, are there any issues with morning research? Do you sometimes feel out of your element, which can throw you off? Or as a veteran, does it not affect you at this point? I don't know what you mean by three setups, Tate. Can you explain the three setups? They GameStop raised 2.14 billion on the back of Roaring Kitty. Wow. Oh, I'm trading in three different places. Are there any issues? Okay, now I understand the context. Can you explain how you manage trading in three setups? Are there any issues with morning research? Do you sometimes feel out of your element, which can throw you off? Or as a veteran does not affect you at this point? Sure. Um, yeah, sure. Basically, I've kind of got like four different trade setups and four different computers and everything all built out that way. I've got one that I'm keeping now in Idaho. I've got one at T3's downtown New York City office. I've got one at a house in Long Island that I actually haven't traded there yet this year since I've been back. And I've got one at my apartment, which is where I am today in the city. Uh, my one that I have in my apartment is kind of a version of my table setup. Um, so I also have a table setup, which is off of a gaming computer laptop, and I've got portable monitors. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be trading for a week in Paris. I'm going to be trading for a week in London. I'll be on vacation for a week in Greece after that, but I'll still probably be having smoking positions on my monitor. So from the tablet setup, I've got the same gaming laptop, and I've got these two portable monitors. And so basically, I'm able to get like a three-screen setup when I'm playing around with the great. Um, the setup is kind of toughest for me. I do my own today because I have two monitors that I'm using this on. I've got these two pretty big screens, and the laptop. Well, I'm using a pretty big screens. I don't use the laptop screen because it's compared to the other ones, and I just don't have enough space here really for that. So this is the thing for me because I kind of need a minimum of three monitors, officially four, but I kind of need a minimum of three monitors to really be able to operate efficiently. So it's supposed to be tricky for me. There are always, I find, like when I've been in Idaho for 6 months and then I come back and I'm using these other setups, like an initial growing pain, which I got through most of that last week on my first week back. Um, I don't know, things just didn't work properly. It's really the office setup. I mean, the biggest thing about the office is all the distractions from the people. So I actually greatly prefer to be remote, but whatever. When I'm in New York City, it just makes sense for me to show up at T3's office sometimes and work from there. Particularly Wednesdays at the office are hectic. So, it's something I'm used to when I first came back, but I recognize that. That's one of the things that we preach about is like know when you're on a different setup. Know when you didn't get a good night's sleep. Know when you're sick. Know when your head's not into it. Know when you didn't get to do your reflex classes for whatever reason. And if any of these things are the case for that day, then take a half step back on how aggressive you trade, the amount of trades that you take, the sizing that you take, and everything else. So definitely when I'm first getting used to things, when I first getting used to things, it's even routine stuff that requires kind of getting used to. My routine in New York City, whether I'm going to the office or I'm trading from the apartment, is definitely different than my routine when I'm in Idaho, where it's a lot quieter and I have a lot more space. I mean, especially if I go to New York City, I city back to the office. I probably shouldn't do that. It's really the fastest and most efficient way to get to the office. But I feel like I'm like risking my life every time I decide to go to the office here because I'm like literally dodging taxi cabs on my way to the office on a city bike, and I actually almost hit, I almost hit a van this last week when I was biking down to the office. So then when I got to the office, and my blood pressure was through the roof, and my trunk, then I got to calm myself down. Um, so I don't know. I think I think for me primarily it's just when I'm first coming back here and getting used to the new routines and the new setups and commute to the office or whatever else that puts an adjustment at first. And what I do for these days is I figure out a little step back as much as I can and risk the new trades and everything else. But then very quickly I kind of get back into the vibe of things. So assuming that my technology is all running properly after a few days and kind of good to go, and I'm back to normal and trading normal and everything else. So yeah, that's not it. But the next question, if you have any follow-ups on that, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up. So 5 o'clock now. Gotta go meet the in-laws for a beverage in a little while. I think they're in the city. So hope everyone had a good day today. Big day tomorrow morning. Good luck with that. I'll see you all then. Have a great night.